Ukraine's gain, here set to dramatic music by their own troops, is increasingly Putin's loss. Russia's stunning military setbacks stirring broad public criticism at home, with shocked military hardliners voicing anger.
Hi, I'm Dmitry.
Now dozens of elected local Russian politicians too are signing an official petition, authored by this local councillor, demanding President Putin be impeached. Ordinary Russians have offered to pay his fines for speaking out, even to hide him, he told me, if the Kremlin tries to put him in jail.
Well, obviously, Russian army is being destroyed right now. So we lose people, we lose weapons, and we lose our ability to defend.
And that fact that the Russian army is suffering these setbacks, that is fueling anger, isn't it? Not just amongst liberal aspects of Russian society, but also amongst hardliners as well. They're furious.
Yeah, actually, pro-war activists, they are now really feel betrayed, and that there is a point where both liberal group of people and that pro-war group of people can have the same goal.
Unlike these early anti-war protesters in Moscow back in February, hardliners complain of Russia being too soft on Ukraine and sending woefully underprepared troops into battle. But it's the heavy price Russia is paying where there may be common cause.
Hi, my name is Ksenia Turstrom.
And why another Russian councillor has filed a second petition calling for Putin to resign. The Kremlin strongman, she told me, is depriving Russians of a future.
Russians become poor, they are not welcome anywhere. Then there's less of facilities, supplies. Russia doesn't really produce anything itself. And I don't know what future can be for the country which is isolated.
Can you talk to me about what impact that lack of a future is having on people that you speak to?
Well, it's quite depressive now, very depressive atmosphere in Russia, and the frustration, feeling fear, anger, shame.
The Kremlin insists the mood of the people is still with the Russian president. But the growing criticism at home and abroad may at least threaten to take the swagger out of Putin's step. Well, Erin, tonight at least 70 Russian local politicians have now signed the petition for Vladimir Putin to resign, which is an extraordinarily high number in a country which it never really did, but certainly no longer tolerates public dissent, let alone official dissent from the Kremlin line. The five politicians that call for his impeachment, they've been fined, but the Kremlin isn't taking really strong action against them. And I think that's really telling of the sensitivities in Russia right now, Erin.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew Chance, thank you so much. And that petition Matthew's referring to, just a few days, 72 hours ago, there were 25 brave signatories. Now, despite those fines, 70? That says something. And I want to bring in Steve Hall because he's the former CIA chief of Russia operations based in Moscow. So, Steve, you hear Matthew talk about this, laying out the rise in dissent in Russia right now that is growing. So what do you see in this?
Well, it's important to understand that things obviously work differently in Russia than they do in a place that has a democracy like the United States or any of the European Union countries. There is no democracy in Russia. So when you have people speaking out like this, first of all, they're going to do it very carefully. But Putin isn't particularly, I don't think, worried about them. He's got spies all around them. He's a former intelligence officer. He knows the importance of spying on dissidents and controlling their actions. So he knows what they're up to, and he's probably got them under control because he can simply throw them in jail anytime he wants. That's what he does, is he represses. The thing is that there's another group of people. These are close advisors to Putin. The Siloviki comes from the Russian word for power. These are like the head of the intelligence service, the head of the security services, some seniors in the military. And when they start noticing these people speaking out in Russia, then they begin to get worried that the entire system that Putin has put together, which they benefit from, is fraying, it's coming apart. And when that happens, it's those people that get worried and think, I wonder if Putin is the right guy to be the president right now.
So I spoke the other day with one of the Russian politicians who's demanding Putin's resignation. He said that these Russian elites, perhaps some of those you're referring to, but also some of the oligarch types he was referring to, that he says Putin needs, want to go back to what they had before the war, and that they are fed up with Putin. Here's what he said.
Putin is very dependent on the elites. He is making their lives difficult. So, one solution for them is to throw him under the bus to get back the lives that they were living before.
Throw him under the bus. Is that on the table, do you think, Steve, from what you know so well about this country? I mean, something so far as a coup?
So the Russian ecosystem is a difficult one. I mean the political and social ecosystem. So you've got oligarchs who do play an important role. They make a lot of money, not only for themselves but also for the companies and for Russia, and of course importantly for Putin. But again, it's not the oligarchs, I think, that are going to rise up against Putin. They could help, they could instigate. But you'll remember Mr. Khodorkovsky, who was one of the prominent oligarchs about 10 years ago, was thrown into jail for precisely getting into politics. Again, it's these close advisors to him. It's people who control the security services, control the police, or actually have their hands actually on the lever of power, and who up till now have been doing what Putin says because they're all part of the system that everybody benefits from if you're high up enough in Russia. But again, when things start to come apart, they're going to think back to Gorbachev in 1991, when the Soviet Union was coming apart and a coup attempt was made against him. It was unsuccessful, but there is precedent for this, and I'm sure Vladimir Putin remembers that quite clearly.
Well, if anyone claims to be a greater student of history as a world leader, I don't know of one. Claims being the word. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.